Hi friends, it's Brittany at Ink and Papyrus and welcome back to my channel. Grid journaling has recently become one of my favorite styles of journaling. It has helped me unleash my creativity and is now one of my favorite ways to break a blank page. First of all, having to decide on how to decorate an entire page and tie all of the elements together can be daunting. Grid journaling allows for as many different distinct elements to live on a paper as one would like and harmoniously. So, all of your grids can either tie into the same theme or they can be completely unrelated. Second, decorating or filling up a grid space is so much less intimidating than finalizing a layout for an entire page. Grid journaling can contain abstract elements and contain art, or can be used as little spaces to collage and use up scraps, or be well planned out spaces to journal about trips and experiences. The grids themselves can be hand-drawn, painted, or created from paper. They can be neat and equal in size and evenly spaced, or they can be haphazard with little rhyme or reason as to how the grid is constructed. It's up to you and it all works. Here is a hand-drawn grid. This page was made up with collage scraps that I had left over from a previous project. They're all bright floral themed elements and this page just makes me happy. These are all different examples of grid journaling that you can do. Some of them are drawn, some of them are made from post-it notes. That's how I made the grid, so I didn't have to measure anything. Some of the grids were created using blobs of watercolor paint. Others were haphazard drawing with no rhyme or reason to the shape or sizes of the grid. I clearly wanted them to use or to look hand-drawn rather. And one of the other grids I did is basically a layout that I'm going to use to journal about a upcoming trip. And the grids themselves were created just from old planner pages. So as you can see, grid journaling can be well planned or it can be haphazard. It can be used to journal about different trips and experiences. So let's get started. Here I just have a blank piece of paper and I am drawing a grid with a ruler. I'm making a mental note of about how many inches across each square is going to be. And actually in many of these layouts you'll see that I don't even use all of the same size boxes. Sometimes I'll take a page and I'll make two small boxes and then a rectangle. Grid journaling can be exactly what you want it to be. There really are no rules to it. The concept is just that you're implementing different spaces on a page and they're kind of distinct entities unto themselves. Does that make sense? Many people create their grids using a pencil and a ruler, but to be honest, my favorite way to do it is just with the template. It's a whole lot less work, a whole lot less thinking. I have pre-cut cardstock templates and I simply put whatever template I want to use on the page and I trace around it. Squares, rectangles, circles. Circle grid journaling is so much fun. Even triangles, it all works. I encourage you to think about what you are wanting to put into your journal area and what theme you're going for, and then pick whatever size and shape grid you think would best suit that. In terms of the spacing that you use, and by spacing I mean how far apart you put your grids, consider if you would want to decorate the area, the white space between the grids. Think about what theme you may want to journal about. Sometimes if I feel like it's too much white space on the page, I'll just take watercolor paint and paint around the grids. Sometimes, like you can see the layout to the left, I chose to leave that white space there completely blank. And sometimes I will decorate the white space between the grids themselves. Remember to add variety to your grid journals. Listen, the grid journal outline does not have to be pencil and it doesn't have to be pen. Here I'm using washi tape and I think it adds a lot of character to the page. Consider going over your pencil with, I don't know, maybe some charcoal pen, letting it bleed a little bit. Maybe you go over it with some washi tape like I'm doing here. Maybe you go over it with some paint to give it more character. Maybe do some shading around the grid to give your grid dimension. There's so many different possibilities. You can really spruce up your grid well before you ever start decorating by considering really cool ways to decorate the grid themselves. Maybe you decide to step outside of the lines literally and do some doodling around the grid. Wouldn't that be fun? Maybe you take some liquid pearls and dab them around the grid. You don't have to stay within the lines, guys, and that is what is so great about grid journaling. So you may be wondering why it looks like I'm already ruining a page. Well, a lot of times I like to start out a page by just squiggling within the boxes. I think it kind of takes the pressure off and it gives an area of interest to look to before you've put anything else down on the page. It really just takes the pressure off, and I've seen a lot of other people do this as well. I'm doing this with a pen, but it doesn't have to be a pen. You could do this with a charcoal pencil. You could do it with watercolor, really whatever you want. I was bad and did not put glue on the back of my washi tape before I stuck it down, and I will tell you what, there's not a day that passes that I do that and I don't regret it. Here I am coming back in with the glue stick to actually tack the washi down. So I have a bunch of papers and some other little embellishments left over from another project. So I think we're just going to take this really simple and make this a collage grid layout. I think this is one of the best utilizations of grid layouts. They sometimes, I do them for very specific purposes, but a lot of times I find myself doing them when I'm really not sure what page layout to do. I'm feeling the need for inspiration. I feel like I don't have any creativity remaining left in the tank. And there's something so innocent about these grid layouts. There's something so fun and so freeing about only having to fill up a small part of a square, and all of a sudden creativity is bustling and back again. And so some of these more abstract layouts where there's not a whole lot of thought put into them is one of my favorites. Of course, there are no rules, but when it is more of a collage / abstract grid layout, I do like to add several different components and make them truly mixed media. A lot of times I will add doodles like you see here, collaged paper, some gesso just to kind of mute things down and to give me a little bit of room to either add some words, add a stamp, add a drawing, something like that. And then before you know it, you have something that looks, even though you might not know its purpose, and even though it looks very abstract, you have what looks to be a completed layout. I have this clear washi tape that has some writing on it, and I decided that that would be a good addition to each of the grids. And as you can see here, I'm pretty much putting all the same components into each grid, but you definitely don't have to do that. If you want to make each grid look completely different, that's totally fine as well. I'm coming in with some gesso just because I did decide that I wanted to do some stamping and put some stamped words over the grid. And I thought if I didn't mute some stuff down, you wouldn't even, I don't know, I did want to create a focal point, and I thought if I didn't at least put a little bit of gesso in there, your eye would be all over the place and not necessarily drawn to the stamped elements. I did want to add some color to each of my grids, so I chose this really pretty magenta looking color, and I just drew a couple of lines with my paintbrush without really any rhyme or reason. Later I do end up going in with the gold and just painting the white space in between the grids, and I loved how this turned out. You definitely don't have to do anything with the white space between your grids. Here, I really like the way the gold worked with the pink and the green. On the page next to it, you'll see I left everything around the grids as white space, and I thought that added the perfect contrast between the collaged neutral papers, the charcoal pencil that I doodled in there. So it's really just about what theme and color palette you're going for. So I decided I wanted my main focal point to be these really pretty tickets. These are printables off the Graphics Fairy. You can check out their website. They do offer different subscriptions for images. They have an absolutely beautiful collection. So I decided to make the focal point these tickets with some words over it. Just some stamped words. I had random stamping I did on white paper, and I took the tickets and glued them into the grids. Some of the larger grids I used whole tickets for. The smaller grids I cut the tickets in half. So you may have said I went too far, like 10 pieces of paper ago. Sometimes I don't know when to stop, but that really is the beauty of grid journaling. You can keep going with it until you're happy. And if you're not happy with the way things are going, layer over it, paint over it, gesso over it, color over it, whatever you want, whatever you need to do until your grid looks like you want it to look. You have full freedom to do so. So here I'm using the stamped images and words as the focal point. I don't know if you can see in the background, I have a huge bag of pre-stamped paper and fabric, and I love doing this and just like mass stamping, I guess you would call, not mass making, mass stamping. It allows me to be so much more creative with the use of my stamps because I don't know, it's such a chore to lug out the stamps and inks and stuff. So if you have a ton of stamped images in different colors on different pieces of paper, on different types of fabric, you're so much more creative with it and you have a tendency to use it more. I don't know, maybe I'm just lazy, but I think in general, anytime you can streamline your crafting process and quicken up cleaning and getting out materials and all that kind of stuff and actually spend more time crafting, it just makes the process so much more rewarding. And voila, another completed grid journaling layout. Oh wait, just kidding, one more thing. I'm going to do a little bit of stamping over those areas that I gessoed earlier. Okay, now it's a completed grid journaling layout. Wow, look how much pigment is in that watercolor. I wish I could remember the name of these watercolors. I got them off AliExpress, so I don't recall and I don't see the name of the company on here, but just look for shimmer watercolors. Are you ready for another no fuss grid layout? Let's take our stamping pad and just create some grids without having to do any drawing or any measuring. This is going to be another really pretty mixed media layout. I love the idea of just stamping these squares on. It really makes it as easy as possible to create a grid layout. I'm going in with some watercolor just to do some doodling and liven up the squares, just like we had done with our first layout with the pen. And then this again is going to be another mixed media layout. I'm going to come in with some paper and some washi tape, and it's just another abstract collage piece that I was really feeling the pinks and the bright colors, and just overall really elevated my mood doing this grid journaling project. And isn't that what it's all about anyways? Maybe it's just me, but I find it impossible to be sad or angry or mad after doing one of these journaling layouts. I think maybe it's because you can just throw yourself into the project and collage and fritter away. You don't have to overthink it. There isn't a whole lot of frustration involved because it's just a square, right? Anyone can fill in and doll up a square, right? So you remove the pressure and it's just such good fun. So now for some other ideas for things that you can utilize grid journaling layouts in. Personally, I love collaging and just doing doodling and creating art in mine, but one of the other great ways to use grid journaling is to actually journal in them. You see, this is the Christmas journal that I created last year that I really only got to do bare bones to. It is mostly empty, and I've decided to create a grid journal that I am going to be using for all of my Christmas adventures in 2024. and I absolutely cannot wait. So the next page after this is a blank page. So I decided for the 2 pages before that to use each of those squares as a day leading up to Christmas. So I'm going to write the date above each of those squares and journal in the corresponding square something that reminded me of that specific date. So for example, if we were to go to a show on December 12th, maybe I would just write a little bit about the show or draw something that reminded me of the show, something like that. So I hope that makes sense. It's essentially grid journaling, Advent, Christmas calendar themed. So I hope you take that idea and run with it and use it as inspiration to maybe create a grid journal for some other time of the year or experience that you may have had. And if you don't like journaling in grids because you can't think of what to write, look at some of these examples. Here, aside from leaving blank space to journal about a trip I have put in quotes and some of my favorite song lyrics, some ideas that I have had. There are plenty of other things that you can journal about. And of course, if you're shy about writing in your journal, you can include images, stamps, paintings, whatever you would like. What about creating a jumbo grid journaling layout from a trip that you took and putting up cut up pieces of photos in there? So the sky is the limit, get creative with it, and most importantly of all, have fun. So thank you guys so much for joining me today. If you found value in this and enjoyed this video, please hit that like and subscribe button, and I can't wait to see you the next time.